Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Dental Disruptors Podcast. I'm Jake Larson. This is my co-host, Clint Berry. We're excited to, as always, we probably always say that, we're excited to share some interesting stories and insights of our own today. Clint, you want to introduce our topic for today?
Yeah. What we want to talk about today was lessons we learned from scaling Weave from zero to $1 billion company. Yeah. And so really hopefully be able to give some valuable information on if you're building a company in dental, and Weave was exclusively dental for the first 5 years. Hopefully this will be beneficial for those type of companies this year, especially if you're a software company in dental.
Yeah. Really cool. Weave was a huge blessing for both of us. It was an amazing experience. Hopefully by sharing some of this stuff, we can give back and help the next generation of companies that get to experience that. It was really cool. So with that, let's just begin. I want to just talk about how we both got involved with Weave to begin with. I think that might be kind of a fun way to start this. How did you find out about Weave? How did you get involved with Weave? I'll tell the same story. And then after we kind of tell those fun stories, we can talk about some of the lessons that we learned. What do you think?
I think that's great.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Sure. I can go first.
Yeah.
Mine's not as funny as yours. I'm excited for yours. But Brandon Rodman was the visionary behind the product of Weave and the idea behind Weave. And he had started a company called Recall Solutions. And it was calling overdue patients with a call center. Mm-hmm. And so they had a staff that would come in, they'd call patients. We'd pull lists from the practice management system by a remote desktop that were overdue. We'd call them and schedule them. And that's where he came up with this idea to build a phone system for dentists to eventually automate recall, I think was the original plan. But he wanted to build this product, and quite frankly, I was the only developer he knew. I was the only programmer he knew. So sometimes when they say who works out, that this is one of those cases where because I was the only programmer that Brandon knew, I got to come in and do it. I had just had my first child, I think, and I couldn't come over immediately. And he wanted to get going. So he actually paid a consulting firm from his 401k. He liquidated his retirement and paid a consulting firm to build the initial version of the product. Got a first handful of customers, reached out to me. He's like, hey, this is working. We need you to come over. And I talked to my wife. I'm like, ready to do a startup thing? Because this is going to get rough. And she said, okay, let's go. And
little did she know.
She didn't know. No. Yeah. And that's kind of how I came into dental and got to work on an extremely amazing product, and it was a cool idea, and it had product market fit from the get-go. Dentists loved it. We certainly had our share of problems, but when it worked, they loved it.
Yeah, sorry to the early customers.
Yeah, it was hard to scale the phone system as we grew and keep it up, but we eventually figured it out.
Yeah. So, I did not know Brandon before. So how I got involved at Weave is I was actually a student in college, and I was about to graduate. And in the program that I was in, they encouraged internships the summer after you graduated to go work for like a big ad agency or something like that. So this was not the summer after graduating. This was the summer before. So I was like, okay, I could get a little bit of a leg up if I found some sort of like marketing communications company locally that I could work for, get some skills, and be more prepared for that internship post-graduation. So I started to look for anything that was advertising, marketing, communications. And at the time, Weave was still called Recall Solutions. This was back in 2011. And it was still called Recall Solutions, but Brandon was renaming it to Weave Communications. It wasn't just Weave at the time. So I was like, oh, communications company. Like, I don't know what it does, but I'll apply to this internship. Apparently I was the only one that did.
Yep, you were the only one that
thank
he
heavens.
posted it to the college board, right? That's
Yeah. It's just like this online thing at the university at BYU I don't know why he posted it there or whatever, but I was the only one that responded to that. Thank heavens, because I was probably wouldn't have gotten it otherwise.
I think we would have taken anyone with a pulse, Jake.
Yeah.
It just worked out that you were awesome.
You can't say we. You weren't even there yet.
I was working with him. Okay.
So, it was Recall Solutions. I remember sitting down with Brandon. He had a big watch on, like a big colorful coat. Brandon's always liked nice things, right?
Yep.
So he had like fancier clothes, and I was like, okay, this guy's got some nice tastes. But it was a great conversation, and he basically told me like, I have this idea, and I was like, okay, that's not like honestly, when Clint says that it has product market fit from the get go, even in that meeting with Brandon, I was like, I could totally see why a dentist would want an phone platform built for them. But the product wasn't, I don't even know if he'd started building it yet. I don't think he had, because for the first while I was selling and supporting the Recall Solutions stuff. And I remember our first install up at a dental office by Hogle Zoo, and how we didn't realize that it was an on-prem server platform, and they built it, they just installed it on a workstation. So many funny stories, but that's how it came to be.
The database was on every computer.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. I started as an intern. I had worked in SEO and some other things before, just as little side gigs and things like that. So did that for the summer, and then the rest is history. Worked as an intern. I remember getting a moving truck to move furniture to the new office, just like all hands on deck, everything from the very beginning.
Lots of hats in the startup. And Jake became one of the best sales reps. First one to sell 30 accounts in a month. So that's more than one a day, which was nuts at the time. And worked his way up to be our first VP of engineering, which was really cool.
Sales. I didn't do anything.
That's what I mean. Sorry. I'm in engineering. He's in sales. Yeah. So Jake was incredible. What a great intern.
Yeah, it worked out. It was awesome. And I will say, I remember the first time I met Clint, we sat down in this office space. It was in the Pleasant Grove location, and we're sitting there talking, and Clint's just telling me like, this is going to be a cash cow. It's going to be a cash cow. I was like, this guy really likes to talk about cash cow.
And do you remember I'm pretty sure they're not profitable still.
Do you remember that?
Oh, I totally remember it. I was so excited because it was like I had not been at a company where the fit was so good.
Yeah.
Where it was like everyone that signed up never quit.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have cancels.
Because we put lots of things in place to make it really hard to quit.
Well, and switching
you
out
basically
your whole
have to
phone
switch out your
system
phone.
was really hard. Yeah.
Made it harder to convince people to start with it.
Totally.
But once you got them.
Yeah.
So super, super fun. I just figured that would be at least entertaining for people to hear some of the stories of the beginnings of Weave, in particular, how we landed there. But what a blessing. It was, those early days were super awesome. They seemed, we'll talk about a little bit about this, but they seemed really hard at the time, and they were. But there's even more bigger challenges and stuff as the company gets bigger. So.
Yep, challenges just change. I remember telling my wife that every year, like, oh, next year will be better. Like, nope, just different. Still hard.
Absolutely. But for the record, I was at Weave before Clint.
It's true. He's not lying.
Now, Clint played a very large role in everything that we became. But
I built the initial database for Recall Solutions, Jake, before you were there.
That's true. Yeah, 1099. Yeah. All right, you win.
Your employee number was set after mine because I did the HR system.
Yeah. Did you do anything for Nets for Africa, though?
Yes.
See?
Yes, I did.
See, that's how.
Wow. We go way back on Brandon's previous gigs.
Yeah, it all came together. Anyway, so we want to now just kind of maybe give some helpful knowledge, I guess, from our experience of what we learned, some of the things that we thought were most impactful that maybe you can say, oh yeah, we're going through that same thing, or this is helpful to keep me motivated and excited to get through this hard time or whatever. Just kind of share that with other software companies that are trying to do something similar to Weave. So I'll just ask a couple questions. Maybe both of us will answer, or one of us will just kind of see how it goes. But my first question for Clint is, if you were to sit down with someone today starting a new tech company, could be in dental, could be outside of it, what would be the single most important piece of advice that you would give them? And that's hard because I know that there's probably a million single most important, but
yeah, no, that
maybe
is a hard
couple
one.
things.
So this is not dental specific question. Basically anyone starting a company.
Yeah. I mean, for our audience, maybe it should be dental specific, but I have a hard time like saying that these best practices would only be good for dental.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair. I mean, I think one of the most important things in building a company is to just have so much grit. And Brandon embodied that, as far as he did not fear rejection. It didn't faze him.
Yep.
Right. And so when we were trying to raise money, a bunch of Utah kids that no one knew, and we kept track. And I think I don't remember the exact number, but I always say it now. It's like
Brandon knows it.
He knew it for a while. It was like 127 people said no in those first 3 rounds, and we had 3 say yes, 1 each time. So we got 1 term sheet each time to lead the round. And so we had a lot of rejection. And I remember calling my wife after, because I'd go with them to the Bay Area to raise money, just in case they had technical questions. Yeah. And I remember calling my wife. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. This is like, they all are saying no. It's terrible. But it was interesting to hear his take later, where he kind of realized, he played baseball, and a really good batting average is above 300, but you're still striking out 6 or 7 times, out of 10. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it builds resilience. And then he served a mission for his church in Romania, where no one wanted to hear about it. And so it's just curious. It's constant rejection. And so he just learned to be resilient.
And he did the door-to-door.
Yeah, and door-to-door sales. That's right. After where he, achieved his first success, worked his way up all the way, basically to a partner in that company, and had hundreds of sales reps under him. And so that was one takeaway that I learned from him, that is like, if you're going to do a startup, you need to be resilient and don't let things get you down, at least not for too long. Mm-hmm. Figure out a way, keep moving on, keep adjusting. But it can be daunting, and it's not for everybody, but that is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd give to anyone, is like, you just got to be relentless.
And that grit and relentlessness is not just on the fundraising side. Like,
no, it's on everything.
Continues from your first customer to your first 100 customers to your first 1,000 customers to your first 50 employees to 100 employees. Like, it might not always be rejection, but
totally. Like what just happened with us right now is like, hey, you were talking to one of our customers and a consultant, Tanner, right? And he's like, hey, you have a new competitor in the space. And you're just like, oh, freak, another competitor trying to come in and do the same thing we're doing. And I think you could, there's so many opportunities to just like give up. You're like, oh, they have more money than us. They have an executive leadership team that's like a lot more seasoned in business or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, we know we're good at executing. Like, just keep on keeping on, keep building. Competitors usually don't bring you down. It's usually internal, or you run out of money. But there's a lot to be said about resilience.
Really good advice. I will add to what Clint said with what like I said, it's hard to say that it's any of these things are the single most important thing that I learned from Weave. But Clint kind of touched on this before, the significance of product market fit is so massive. And I feel like what Clint said about Brandon's resiliency of not fearing failure and not being negatively impacted by it helped us find a product market fit with Weave very quickly. Like if you take things personally, the natural human instinct is to try to protect yourself. So that fear of rejection will hold you back from asking your customers the hard questions because you don't want to hear the answer because it's going to negatively impact you. But if you are seeking for truth of what's really valuable and you want honest feedback of like, tell me my baby's ugly if it's ugly. Like I want to hear it. I have the grit. The door's been slammed on my face 100 times, or I've had 126 of 127 investors tell me no. Like you just have that grit to get to people's true perception of your ideas without getting your feelings hurt. I feel like it helps you find product market fit way faster than if you are afraid to ask those hard questions and you don't have that grit or relentlessness to or hunger to get to the root cause of the problems that you're trying to solve, and be willing and vulnerable to have your idea be picked apart and told that it's wrong and all that. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but that determination to find product market fit is critical in my opinion.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we were lucky in that Brandon just had good product instinct too. If you look at how his first designs of the desktop app of Weave compared to what we have today,
it's
very similar.
Yeah.
It was good instinct, and that helped for sure.
Yeah. So really what we learned is Brandon is awesome.
Brandon's good.
Brandon's good.
He's pretty great to work with too.
Yeah.
So.
We love shout out to Brandon. He's awesome. I just want to say that from like a sales perspective, and Brandon was a sales first leader in a lot of ways because he came from sales, right? And I didn't appreciate that as at the time as much, but being willing to like get the product out there, get it in people's hands and learn faster rather than having to have the product be perfect. I think that really helped because Weave was the phone piece, yes, was new, but like text messaging and patient engagement and those types of things were not. Like we were not first to the game in any of those categories. In fact, there were other companies that had massive, huge head starts.
Yeah.
You know, Solution Reach, Demand Force.
See, we were the first in dental to do true two-way texting with a normal phone number.
Yes, we did, and that was a selling feature. But the patient engagement idea.
Oh yeah, that had been around.
It would not have been hard for Solution Reach to.
Yeah, you'd think
to do that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We were quick to it, and it was that willingness to like move fast and try new things and disrupt Solution Reach, or I say Solution Reach and Demand Force because at the time that we were selling it, they were in every office,
yeah,
and that's who we were pitted up against. But we were moving way faster, we were innovating way faster, and I can remember 3 or 4 product ideas that I remember Brandon presenting. You remember like the scorecards, like the stars that people they'd go like those types of things. Like we tried a lot of different things.
Yeah, we did.
We failed fast.
Yep.
And it really, I feel like, helped us aim the direction of the product quickly.
Yeah.
So that we could find not just a little bit of product market fit, which we did with the phones, but like product market fit and like 3 or 4 or 5 different features that really helped us disrupt the patient engagement space completely.
Yeah, I forgot about the stars. Yeah, they came and they died.
They came and they died, and it was fast.
Yep.
Right. We learned and we failed quickly with that one and moved on. And I remember pushing Clint like we got to get faxing because that's that. No, it was robocalls.
Oh, robocalls.
It was robocalls because we would lose a lot of deals that was
Solution Reach's answer when someone tried to cancel. Oh, but did they have robocalls?
And the doctor was like, yeah, I can't go without my robocalls. So I was like, and Clint was like, no, we don't need that. And we didn't, right?
We didn't. I mean, maybe we should have just done it because we were already a phone system.
And it was easy.
But I don't like getting robocalls.
Yeah.
I don't want to build a feature that I don't want.
Yeah. So anyways, I don't know if that makes sense, the whole product market fit thing, or at least how I'm describing it. It's super hard to find product market fit, but I feel like to be successful, you have to ask the hard questions about what your customers or potential customers' true perception of your product and your idea actually is.
Yeah. Agreed.
And the best way to do that is to ask them to pay for it, because everybody's nice. They will tell you, oh, your ideas are great. Yeah, I'll give you feedback, and they'll give you nice, fluffy feedback until you said, well, will you sign up? Like, will you actually pay me for this? And they're like, well, I didn't like it as much as I actually told you that I did, because now I actually have to pay for it. So the sooner you can start to ask people to pay for it, the better. Yeah. Well, I asked you the first question. Do you have any for me?
I wanted to talk a little bit specifically about dental, why it's a good industry to be in. So for these dental startups that maybe have fallen into dental for whatever reason, there's a lot of AI companies we work with that maybe just fell into dental randomly. Their dad is a dentist or, something like that, but maybe haven't done a bunch of market research. But I kind of want to reinvigorate that idea to go into dental. Is actually a good one. It's a good spot to be. So
Clint, let me ask you the question. Clint, why is dental a great industry for tech startups to start into?
I just put a couple down in my notes, and there's about an estimated 150,000 dental offices in the USA. And one thing, when we were raising money for Weave, that was always a concern was, hey, this market's too small. Like, how are you guys going to be a big business? And I don't think that's a problem anymore, because I think there's so many successes in dental that they're like, oh, we get it. Mm-hmm. But the talking point we used to like to say to investors is there's 9 times more dental offices than Starbucks in the U.S. And then usually the investors are like, what? Really? Like,
I don't realize actually how big that is.
Yeah, that's how many dental offices there are in the U.S. And then that's when their eyes open, like, oh, that is a lot, right? Like, there's a big opportunity there. You can be $100 million in revenue with, 25,000 locations for most products. So it's a great first industry. The other is that typically dental offices don't go out of business as much. And so, like, if you're building software for SMB, customer cancellations or churn is always an issue for SMB. But for dental, it was actually not an issue.
Not at all.
Because dental offices just go out of business a lot less. They still do. Obviously, everyone can't just make it. But especially now with DSOs and dentists don't just come out and go straight into starting their own practice. They usually go work for another practice, at a more established place. And so they just don't go out of business as quick. So if you're worried about customer churn, dental's an awesome place to be for that. I would also say that dental offices typically make more money on average than your average SMB, which is great. So they just have a little bit more to spend in some cases. Now, by and large, dentists are historically cheap and really hard to sell.
Frugal, Clint, is a much better word.
Yeah. So Jake knows this better than anybody because he was selling dentists for 9 years there. But that can be hard. And the other thing that especially if you're coming out of like a modern software stack type of company, like if you're an engineer starting a company, it took me a long time to realize how behind dental was. Like, oh, wait, these guys are still solving problems that I thought were solved. And they're not solved in dental. Even like we're tackling data warehousing right now for dental. And I maybe it's not solved on a lot of SMBs, but some of these companies that we're talking to are not SMBs, right? They're large DSOs, still don't have good data warehousing, probably because data healthcare portability is not very good, but also just because it's a little bit behind in technology. So there's a lot of opportunity to bring modern technology to dental, which is really fun. And it's fun seeing the AI revolution come in and do that. So those are the things I thought of. But
and I'll just add one more is there are a lot of additional industries that are similar to dental to expand into, right? So like at dental or at Weave, we went from dental to optometry, and there's a lot of similarities between the business model and structure of those two.
Yeah,
right?
Recurring visitors.
Appointment reminders, right? All those different things. Insurance things, right?
In dental, they recommend you come every 6 months, and I think in optometry they recommend every year. Like it's very the industry's kind of set up for them. And that was one of our best launches that we ever had. Was going into optometry, so it was a good first one to go into.
And then we've also launched into veterinarian.
Yeah,
right?
that was a lot
Which is
different from an infrastructure standpoint. So the technology had to change a little bit more where you're dealing with animals and things like that. But yeah,
the
similar
model of
similar
recurring.
behind in technology, like looking for new tech. And yeah, it was a great launch as well.
So I would just add to what Clint's saying as far as dentistry being a great place to start is, yes, the initial TAM might seem small, which I think it's been proven that that's not the case. But there's also a lot of similarities between other healthcare businesses like optometry, veterinarian, physical therapy, med spas. Like there's so many different things that your product may be able to translate into that pretty seamlessly, similar to what we've did.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So let's go into, I thought this would be a fun question. What was the hardest thing that you feel like you experienced growing Weave? Not the hardest thing that necessarily happened to you or something like that, but like is in regards to scaling it, what was most difficult?
Oh, like, so within the company, not like in my personal life, what was the hardest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, within the company, in the technology side, what happens is if you do hit success like we did and things start growing fast, all of a sudden you're an engineer, then you're an engineering team lead, then you're an engineering manager, then you're a director of engineering, and you're finally, like a VP of engineering or a CTO,
Mm-hmm.
like in
a very short,
relatively
short
period of time as you're growing. So, and then you're scaling the software that whole time. So you're managing hiring, you're managing all these things. And, we, of course, brought on help, brought in an actual VP of engineering to help with the hiring, things like that. But scaling when you're fast growing is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, the commodity in this case, which is very Weave specific, which is the phones, we ran an open source phone system on our own servers. That was the hardest to scale. So that was probably the hardest part of Weave, was trying to stay ahead of sales. I mean, we never did. Sales always led, and then we were trying to frantically catch back up.
Yeah, my bad.
Well, I think that's a good model, though,
Brandon's
right?
fault.
Because if you can sell it, that at least that you have some semblance of fit because people are actually buying it. And we hardly ever wasted engineering cycles at Weave because everything we were working on had already been sold, right? So we knew it was going to bring revenue. We very rarely worked on things that
Would you
didn't
say
sell.
that that's a good thing, generally speaking, a good best
100%.
practice? Yeah.
Yeah. I think if engineering is not behind, you run a huge risk, right? If engineering is leading out,
you're building things that you may or may not be able to
to
sell. Might not actually solve the problems that you think you're solving.
And, there's ways around that. Product-led growth is awesome, and you can do it. But you have to be very confident in what you're building is going to work.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing that in looking back at the whole experience, and this kind of goes back to the relentless thing Clint was talking about, at all these different phases, I remember in the early days, right, we were selling customers. We had a map, like we were marking across the United States every time we'd sell an office, right? It was so fun and exciting to watch that expand. But we had unique scaling challenges, in particular with a phone system that is the lifeblood of our customers, right? So if there was an outage, it was a very big deal. And I remember Clint having lots of late nights. I remember getting phone calls on my cell phone at like 4 a.m. As soon as offices were open up on the East Coast, like my phones weren't working. So many challenges like that in the early days that seemed really hard and made you question, like, is this actually going to work? And then having gone through all of that and thinking that it was so hard in that moment, having the ability to look backwards and being like, there actually is light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't necessarily have that perspective. And I think that having that perspective of like, if a customer's upset, it's okay. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to grow. There's good that can come out of all of these things, and just keep going. Don't let it prohibit you from giving it your best every day, right? And that's super hard. It's easier to do it in hindsight. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I just feel like that I hope that story could give another company hope. Like, you might be going through something hard right now, whether it's product, whether it's internal. I mean, we're talking about another startup that we know that is having some other internal issues. Like, keep fighting through those, because there is, and I know it's not always the case for every startup, but that perspective of like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Keep going. Have that relentless approach, and you're going to need it at all different stages of your company. But I think that's the only way to really kind of get through that, because there were some hard times in those early days.
Man, they were hard. Again, my heart rate gets elevated talking about it, because you're like, anxiety's coming.
How long have the phones been out
yeah,
for?
especially like you're on the sales side, like your commissions directly depend on our stuff working, right? And so it was stressful.
Or the perspective of the customer that you're about to sell that day, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're on the final
gonna lose the deal
stage, and they're like, "Oh, my friend said his phones were out for 6 hours today."
Yeah,
like,
no, that was really rare. Let's not say that was normal.
Yeah, 5 minutes today.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So, what other things from Weave would you want to share? What else did we learn? Culture's king. I think that's one of the things that was one of my favorite things about Weave was the culture that was created. The relationships were there. Like, I think that helped with the resiliency. Like, I think we had especially the early days, a pretty tight-knit group that was all rallied around the similar cause, so that when things got hard, it wasn't creating division, but creating unity. Like, egos were set aside. It was, what do we have to do to make this work?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm a huge champion of that and creating a great business culture. And Brandon was a master of that and trying to, make the culture a place where we would want to work if we were the employees.
Yeah.
And so, we just took a very specific employees, take care of the employees. And if we take care of our employees, then they'll take care of the customers and the product. So, yeah, I think, if you're building a startup and you're seeing some success, definitely taking a little bit of time to focus on the culture and making sure that your values, your corporate values are aligned with who you want to hire and the kind of things that you're trying to do. Super important. I don't think you don't have to do that from the onset, right? Like, because in the beginning, the values of your corporation are basically the values of the founders, and it will come through in a small group, under 10. It's easy because you're all with each other all the time. It's very clear to see what you value. As you start to scale and see success, you have to start writing it down, because you're not going to start seeing everybody after 50 people.
And you have to be really intentional about the things that you're doing.
Yep. Who you're rewarding, what behavior are you rewarding? Like, what do you value, And in those early days of Weave, we had such great people. There was no finger pointing. Like, even when the technology suffered, people knew we were working on it. Like, we were doing everything we could to keep it up.
Yep.
No one thought like, oh, Clint's just sitting back and we're all getting screwed because he's not working on it. And so we all had each other's back. We were all pushing super hard, and there was no backbiting, like nothing serious. And so, I think it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, I would see Clint and the hours that he was putting in to try to resolve the issues when, like, from a sales perspective, right? I was trying to sell the product and grow it on that side, and Clint's trying to support it on the other side. And I never felt like Clint was not giving it his all. So how could I be upset about losing a deal when my team is doing everything that they can, right? And you, once again, that, like, hindsight is 2020, but like losing one deal over that was not going to make or break Weave. Yeah. It was that light at the end of the tunnel. Like, we're going to get through this. I'll control what you can control.
I'm sure you signed those people up later that
and
year.
We didn't. I mean, the people that I won't name any names, but I remember like a pretty bad incident of, installing a customer, database problems that were pretty significant. he was really upset. I remember him signing back up like a year later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you think that but you know, if your product is good and it really brings value and you work out the wrinkles and people can see that, like, you will get those customers back. You will have those opportunities, and pointing fingers and being upset about things will wreck it from the inside before you get that chance to fix it.
Yep.
So I think that was a huge. I don't know. Maybe Weave was a unicorn in that sense. Like, I don't have enough experience with other companies scaling to the size of Weave to say, like, is that normal? Were we just like 1 in a million? But like, the culture that was created at Weave and the relationships that we built there, it truly was like a super unique and amazing experience.
Yeah,
so
it was pretty special.
All right. Well, I don't even know how long we've been going. We've just been
Probably too long.
We've just been rolling on this.
Hopefully that's good advice.
Yeah. Hopefully there's something in there that's actually good advice and not just us reminiscing about all the good times.
We take emails. If you ever just have a question, we love talking to startups. So if you're like, hey, I'm a startup in the dental space, you can email us, clint@getcalla.com, jake@getcalla.com. We're happy to answer. Jake has talked to several of our customers about their go-to-market strategy, how they're doing sales, what's important. And we don't expect anything in return. We just love startups and the ecosystem. So feel free to reach out.
So hopefully that was beneficial. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Dental Disruptors Podcast, as we shared a little bit about our experience at Weave and creating something that disrupted the industry in a very positive way. All right. So thanks for joining us. Talk to you next time.